Buckle up. We are back, baby. It is your lovely host, MKB, and we are back in business for episode 34. This week, I am getting ready to go on a trip to Phoenix, Arizona for my birthday. I secretly hope something goes wrong so I can have some juicy stories for this podcast. Make sure to follow this podcast on social media. We are at Travel Disasters on literally every platform, but I'll be posting pictures from my trip, and if anything goes wrong, that's the first place you'll hear about it. Have you ever set high expectations for your birthday trip and it blew up in your face? Well, I want to hear about it. So send them to traveldisasterspodcast@gmail.com so I can read them on our autopilot episodes where we read exclusively listener stories. So this first episode of Listener Stories will release in a few short weeks, so make sure to tune in for that. Thank you so much from the bottom of my little heart for listening to this episode. If it's your first time listening, there are 33 earlier episodes for you to binge. And if you're an avid listener, just know that I love you. No matter who you are, stop what you're doing right now and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. If you happen to be listening from an iPhone, make sure to hit those 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave a written review because it helps this podcast so much, and I will read it on the air. Today, we have a very special guest. She is a stand-up comedian, radio personality, and all-around amazing human. Annie Russell is in the studio today, and she takes us back to 2012 when she's dating the lead guitarist in a band. Hot, right? Wrong. This guy is a total jerk, and the trip, it was a total bust, but we're here for it. So, Lego. It's you and me, baby. We're going on the trip from hell, where every flight is missed. They lose your luggage, and you're in the middle seat between a sumo wrestler and a screaming baby. Don't worry, I'm coming along for the ride. I'm Mary Kate Beck, and this is Travel Disasters. All right, are we ready?
Yeah, we're going.
Okay. Annie Russell, how are you doing today?
I am doing so well. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, of course. Thank you for being a guest. You were just in a station since 5 a.m.
Yes. I was hosting Weekend Edition, which is like a morning news program on a local NPR station. So
that's awesome.
This is on hour 6 of talking into a microphone. So we're all warmed up.
You're warmed up.
Ready to go.
Well, your voice sounds amazing.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you on the show.
I'm psyched to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be super fun. So I feel like we've known each other for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I've been in Chicago 2.5 years now.
Yeah, and where's home for you?
So I grew up in New York City, but I've lived all over doing public radio stuff. And before Chicago, I lived in Burlington, Vermont, which is a small college town.
Beautiful.
In Vermont, working for their local NPR station. And so, yeah.
You were like the NPR poster child. You just have the voice of velvet, and you're so like calm and
I am the token white lady in a cardigan sweater that folks can't see at home. But
you
yeah,
look like you brew your own kombucha.
I sure do, Mary Kate. Sure do. I'm getting really into composting lately.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I love to travel, so that's why I'm so excited that you had me on.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So that kind of leads us into our beautiful travel scale that we do every episode. And I always like to ask people like where they kind of fall. So it's usually 2 extremes of, 0 being never traveled at all and like 10 being travels all the time. So today's travel scale is Genghis Khan on like the end of the spectrum that's like traveling all the time. So like traveling the world, conquering everything, to like we called it grandma prison.
I love that this made it in. I love that this made it in.
It's staying
I'm
in
excited.
Too. So grandma prison, so like assisted living, bed sores, neglect. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
but where do you fall? Yeah.
I've never pillaged anything, so I don't think I can be at a 10. But I would put myself.
You've never pillaged?
I haven't. I mean, I know this is like a kind of a confessional pod, so I might as well say never have I ever pillaged. But... so I'm not going to put myself at a 10, but I would say I'm probably at an 8. I fly probably like twice a month for work.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you do, if you don't mind my asking.
I'm an editor with this organization called the Association of Independents in Radio. And so I am sort of like the link between independent audio producers and networks like NPR and other places. And so I help people shape their podcast pitches and stuff like that. So I work in audio, but I travel all over for that. So I probably fly at least twice a month for that. And then I also, do stand up and I travel a fair bit for that as well.
So that's awesome. Yeah. So for work, are you flying like coast to coast to big cities, or are you going to like little small towns? What does that travel look like for you?
Everything in between. So like this week, I just got back from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Fabulous.
working on like a co-production with the public radio station there, which was such a fascinating place to get to sort of learn about. But then next week, I'm in Seattle. And the week after that, I'm in New Orleans.
Perfect.
And I run like a training in New York twice a year that lasts a week. And we're kind of expanding that. So it's really like everything
all over the board.
in the mix.
That's great.
But pretty much like in the U.S. for the most part.
Yeah, I love that. And then for stand-up, like where have you been?
Oh, gosh. So I did this sort of challenge for myself this year where I challenged myself to ask for 100 opportunities in stand-up. I made a spreadsheet just because I don't know how other like female comedians feel, but sometimes I felt hesitant to sort of like put myself out there for opportunities. Yeah. And I've been doing stand-up like 8 years now. Totally. And so like I would see less experienced comics sort of like lapping me and getting opportunities that I wanted. And I kind of realized that it was because I wasn't asking for them. So I kind of forced myself to do that. And as a result, I applied to like 1 million festivals last year.
I love that.
And so as a result, I did festivals in North Carolina. I went to Texas. I went to Indiana. I went to Michigan. I went
all
to
the sexy Midwest
Boise. I went to New York. I went to Boston. I went to back to New England. So I did shows in Vermont and New Hampshire. So really all over the map.
That's so cool.
Minneapolis. So yeah.
Oh, what a great challenge for yourself. And to keep track of it too and hold yourself accountable.
I'm a spreadsheet gal, Mary Kate. I don't know if
I'm
that's
type A,
clear, to people. But yeah, and I'm doing it again this year. And if folks find that helpful, I think that you should do it.
Yeah, I might like hit you up for that spreadsheet just to get ideas of, and you're so right where, all you have to do is ask. And I feel like as women too, sometimes I'm like, I just want to wait to be asked.
Right.
But it's no, a part of this business is running it like a business where you have to like go out, seek opportunity, put yourself out there. So that's great.
Yeah. And before I was a comedian, I was involved in like some music scenes, which we're going to talk about that later on in the show. And one of the things that I learned working with youth and teaching music a little bit is that, a lot of times when girls learn something, they want to like wait until they're perfect to like show it to anyone. Mm-hmm. Whereas like when boys learn something, they don't necessarily have that hesitation and they're just like out in the mix. Yes. And like I'm obviously generalizing, there's a lot of exceptions to this rule, but I sort of like I'm always thinking about that and challenging myself, you know, to go against those norms.
Yeah. And that's a big thing that I try to tell myself all the time, where like I read it in like a self-help book, but it's done is better than perfect. So if you wait until something is perfect, like it's never going to get done. So like just put it out there. You can perfect it later and just kind of get the ball rolling, really. Because if you wait for perfection, you will stunt your growth for sure.
Totally.
Oh, I love it. So let's take us to your travel disaster. Where are we going today?
So, okay, I had a lot of things that I could have picked from. Like I found a used tampon in an Airbnb on a floor. I have like gotten passive aggressive notes from an Airbnb host.
Wow.
Like I have like had a lot of travel disasters, but there's one that really sticks out in my mind, and it's from 2012 is when this happened.
Recent?
Yeah. And so this is recent enough. And at the time I was dating someone who was in a band. He still is in that band.
He sounds hot. I like him already.
He is hot. Like I'm going to say a lot about him, and nothing can take that away from him. Okay.
Hot band boys get away with a lot of stuff. Let's just say that.
And so at the time they had just gotten signed to this like sort of cool Brooklyn record label. That's where I was like living at the time. And they got an opportunity to go on their first 6-week tour. So this was like a big deal for them. But they didn't have the money for like a van. They like weren't really set up for all of it. So I think I lent him something like $500 to put towards their travel costs.
So nice of you. But I would never
I'm going to get paid back any day now. Any day now, I'm sure.
Just Venmo request that shit.
That I'm going to get that money. I've blocked him on all platforms. It's
Great.
not
amazing. I can't wait to see where this goes.
Yeah, so they had like a very long 6-week tour that they were planning to be on. And I sort of like wasn't thinking about going to any of the shows because I was like, that's kind of an overstep. Like, I don't really want to travel to go see him.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But then it came to my attention that their drummer, Zach, had invited his girlfriend to join them from a leg of the tour, which was from LA to Austin. And I was like, that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
There's definitely enough room. His girlfriend, who I got along with really well, was going to be there. And I was like, you know what? Like, maybe I'll like ask. Probably shouldn't have said his real name. It's fine. It's fine.
Maybe I keep it
in. No, he will never find this podcast.
So
I'm not worried about it.
Keep it in.
Yeah, maybe I'll just like ask him if he thinks it would be a good idea. So he was not into the idea. He was very, very opposed to it. He was like, I think that's a horrible idea because
holy shit,
his bandmate, the lead singer. So my boyfriend was the primary songwriter and lead guitar player. His best friend from childhood was the lead singer of this band. The only person I've ever met in my life who I consider to be a true psychopath. Like if you ask me like the one person I've met who has some severe issues, I would say it's this guy. Anyway, he hated my guts.
Oh my goodness.
He definitely saw me as sort of like a Yoko figure in this whole situation. And so you can bleep this name I'm about to say. He was like, there's no way Caleb is going to go for that. Like, you cannot come on this trip. But somehow I managed to weasel my way in.
Yes, you sneaky little girl.
And
you're like, I'm coming whether you like it or not.
Yeah, which again, we want to be very intentional about setting this up. Like, that's not the best tone to set for the beginning of a trip. Yeah. You're like, I am for sure going to go where I am not wanted and everything is going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to go swimmingly.
So it was decided that I would fly out to LA to meet them because they were on sort of a longer tour driving. Right. And my best friend lived in LA at the time. And so I spent a couple days with her. And then I was going to meet up with them for their show. And day one, when I meet up with them, it's already like a complete hot mess. Like they're upset because one of their shows got canceled. Like Caleb doesn't even greet me.
Oh, goodness.
My boyfriend was just like really stressed out and annoyed that I was there.
Yeah.
And so I decided that the way that I'm going to deal with this is by like getting really, really drunk.
For sure.
So that's the first
Great
thing
solution.
that we all did. It's the first night. It's their show had been canceled, so there's not even really anything to do.
Yeah.
So we're just...
And tensions are high, so
tensions are high.
Let's just go to a dive bar and drink this
exactly.
off. Yeah.
So we're at this bar in LA, and it gets really rough like right away. The night ends with his bandmate screaming at me in the van, like, I don't know why you came here. Like, I hate you. You're taking my friend away from me. So all the things that had been like under the surface, came right up to the surface. Literally day one.
Sounds super healthy.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And so that's night one, and that's LA. And I would say by the time we got to Phoenix, things were really bad. We go to their show, which is at a sort of like DIY venue. It's not even a real bar. It's the kind of place where like you're sort of getting served illegal cans of PBR. There's no fire code whatsoever.
AF. Yeah.
It's like it's the back of a warehouse, which it was just one of those places.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, it became clear that like we didn't know where we were going to stay that night. In
God.
LA,
What?
one of the bandmates' ex-girlfriends had graciously put us all up in their house.
Angel.
And yeah, she was actually a delight.
Yeah.
And, by the way, all the girlfriends were great.
Yeah.
Like all the girlfriends are amazing. The dynamic in this like music scene was that all the girlfriends really had it together and paid for everything. And then we just had these like indie rock boys who like didn't have their lives together that we were like just shepherding around.
Oh, you're like, come on, I'll take care of you.
So yeah, that was the vibe of this entire group of people. So all the girlfriends were fantastic. And it becomes clear though that like we don't know where we're going to sleep that night.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the one place that's been offered is this like punk house. And when I say punk, I mean crust punk house.
Oh my God.
And Andy and Zach, who are the other couple on the trip, tap out at that point. They're like, we're not staying there.
Yeah.
We're grabbing a hotel room.
So for people that don't know what like a punk house, please describe.
I'm just going to tell you what I saw.
What are we walking into?
I'm just going to tell you what I saw.
Yeah.
So this is the type of house where you walk in, there are any number of people living in just complete like straight up squalor. There are, you know, we walk in, there's people just like doing all sorts of drugs, you know, just openly, which wouldn't have been a big deal, except there was a child asleep literally on a couch.
No.
And I was like, this is like really fucked up.
Yeah.
So we get there and the whole vibe is like really aggressive and weird.
For sure.
And there's a bunch of people there. We don't even really know who lives there and who doesn't. Like it's all just like really, really sketchy.
Yeah.
And of course, our accommodations are we're sleeping on a floor. And I tried to tell my boyfriend at this point, like, hey, like the other couple on the trip like got a hotel. Like I would be totally willing to pay for a hotel. And he was like, no, I can't leave my bandmates. Like we got to do this. And the people who lived there were showing us videos of how they had woken up their children by throwing a live chicken into the bed.
Jesus.
And they're showing this on the video. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with this. As we were pulling out the next morning, I literally called like
DCFS.
Yes.
Oh
because,
my God.
And everyone was furious at me for doing it. But I was like,
But
this is like not okay.
yeah, these children should not be living in these conditions.
So clearly, like, I'm not chill enough to be on this. I'm not chill enough to be here.
Yes, you are. You are a rational human being. Those boys are not.
It was bad. And let me just say, everybody involved was way too old to have been involved in this
For sure.
situation. And so that's Phoenix. By the time we get to Tucson, I think I'm getting the order of that correctly.
Yeah.
I apologize if I don't. But yeah, I think I've got the order of that right. By the time we get to Tucson, I find out that when we're in Austin, which is the night after that my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend is also going to be there.
Great.
And I am already like...
I would flip a lid.
I flipped out in a way that was unbecoming.
Did she plan to be there? Like, how did that transpire?
She planned to be there.
And he knew she was coming?
He knew she was coming. It never got told to me until I found out at the very, very last minute. And by last minute, I mean like the night before when we're driving to Austin. And the only reason why he found out was the Austin show was going to be like this sort of music festival that they were playing. Another band on the music festival was another acquaintance of ours was playing. This girl had asked if she could go with them. And there had been like a really sketchy relationship between my boyfriend and this ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
I knew like something was up, and I knew that like there was one reason and one reason only why she wanted to be in Austin that night.
Yeah.
And I found out that, like she was going to be there. He knew about it the whole time and hadn't told me. He had also like heavily discouraged me from going on that trip.
Oh my gosh. And now you're like, it's all planning out.
Yeah. And of course, I feel crazy because I'm just like, am I overreacting to this? Like, what's going on? And I'm also
scheming. That's so shady.
And I'm also a dumbass in my 20s at this point in time. So I don't know like what I'm supposed to be doing. But we get there, and of course, they're playing like the same venue on the same night. Everyone is there, and he decides that in the green room of that show is the moment that he's going to tell me that he needs some space.
The look on your face is so good.
And I was like, oh, what? What now? I'm like, so you didn't need space when you were asking me for money to go on the tour. You didn't need space at any other point in time, except coincidentally when your ex-girlfriend is going to be in the venue. Like, interesting timing on this.
Oh my God.
So he asked me for some space. Right before they're about to go on, he's like, I feel like we really need to have a conversation when we get back. Like, let's just get through this trip.
Get through. What a dick.
And so I don't like know what to do. And so I just like start walking around Austin and I'm like so upset. And I start walking around Austin and I'm just like, do you want space? Like, I don't, literally their drummer is the only person who's been nice to me of anyone in the entire group, my boyfriend included and his girlfriend. I like tell them what's going on. I'm like sobbing at this point. And so I just decide to like go walk around Austin and I sit on a park bench and I just start like sobbing and I can't stop. And I'm just like, it's the culmination of all the stuff. That is like, that's happened over this past week. And as I'm sitting there, a parade starts to go by.
Oh my God, this is a fucking rom-com.
Right in front of me. Like literally right in front of me. I don't know what the occasion was.
At night too?
It was at night.
So bizarre.
It was in like March or maybe it wasn't March. Maybe it was, anyway, it was in the spring at some point. I do not understand what the occasion for this night parade was. But a parade just starts going by and I'm like, well, this is perfect. Fantastic. Yeah. At a certain point, I'm like, okay, I've done enough crying at this parade.
Yeah.
I'm gonna...
This is the saddest parade.
Like, I have to go back, to the venue. And so I go back and once again, it turns out we have nowhere to sleep for the night.
Jesus.
The band that his ex-girlfriend is there with also has nowhere to stay for the night. They have a mutual friend that is the manager of like a thrift store.
Oh,
and
God.
So it's decided that all of us are going to sleep on the floor of this thrift store.
Jesus Christ.
Together.
But what if there's like couches in the thrift store?
There was not.
Oh, no.
There was not couches in the thrift store.
What?
It was literally like myself next to my boyfriend at the time, and then his ex-girlfriend.
No.
Very close to him on the other side. And I was like, whew, okay.
Yeah. No, this is too close for comfort. I'm like, you can't. First of all, we have to sleep on the floor of a fucking thrift store, which is miserable. Second of all, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
I'd be like, get your own fucking place to stay. You're not like our throuple. Get out of here.
And of course, like, I didn't say anything to her. Like, I didn't start a fight with her.
Yeah.
I was actually like nice to her.
Yeah.
And
you're
like
much kinder than I am.
We got along actually fine. And
you're
it was
a saint. I would be so rude.
Well, after I had already been screamed at in the van by the bandmate, I was like, I am not starting any other conflicts with anybody
any more enemies
on this trip.
Yeah.
And so I kind of was telling her at one point in the night, I was like, yeah, like, I feel like I'm getting in the middle of this like band. And she's like, oh yeah, like that's part of why we broke up. And I was like, oh, okay. So this isn't just me. But at the same time, they still had a really sketchy relationship.
Yeah.
And the thing was really, really hard because the next day was when I'm supposed to fly back. And they make this whole, scene about how it's really inconvenient to drop me off at the airport, but I guess they can do it on their way out of town. And I'm like, all right. So they do drop me off at the airport. And I've just been told like the night before that
my boyfriend needs space. We're going to have a conversation.
Yeah, we're breaking up, basically. And I think at one point in Tucson, he said to me, like, we're going to break up after I get back.
I'd be like, then just do it now.
Yeah. So
pussy.
those are the circumstances that I'm leaving under. And I get back to New York and I just have a text from him, like, miss you, like nothing happened.
Oh my God.
It took us probably another year to actually break up.
Annie! What? No!
Yeah.
Annie in her 20s, baby angel.
I dated that person for another year.
No.
I did.
Oh, no. I'm like so disappointed.
I know.
You're so amazing.
I'm disappointed in myself too. But yeah, I have not spoken to him in many years. I wish him the best.
And you cut him out of everything. I love that.
Oh, that's also I'm just like that.
Me too.
Yeah.
I eliminate exes from my life like immediately after breaking up. I'm like, block you on this.
The thing about it takes me a really long time to break up with people, like as evidence from this story. Like I have never had a breakup go through on the first try. And I literally like once it finally is done though, I'm like, I have to block them on everything. Otherwise, I will be very tempted to just backslide.
Yes. And then you just keep repeating the same cycles.
Yes.
Yeah, in the same way. Oh, that's so great.
So I don't know. If that's not a disaster, I really
don't know. It is a
disaster.
Oh, my God. Oh, so that whole trip. I just can't believe how dumb and unorganized these guys were. Like, you don't know where you're going to sleep every night? Like,
yeah.
And what kind of car were they driving around? Like with all their
it was like a 15 passenger van. And so there were 6 of us in there plus all of their equipment.
Would they sleep in the van other nights? Like, how does this work?
I don't think they did. I think they always managed to like find people that were willing to put them up.
Wow.
And yeah.
That is no way to live. I could never do that. Oh my God. Well, thank God you broke up with his ass. Jesus.
Yeah. It eventually happened.
Like the tour was over and he got back.
I mean, the tour was over. He got back and he basically like pretended like nothing had happened.
Wow.
And we never talked about it.
What? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, that would be an uncomfortable confrontation. I'm very confrontational, but like, oh, that would be such an awkward, especially since so much time had passed, like since the incident.
This was probably in the middle of their 6-week tour. So I want to say it was probably not until 3 weeks later that he got home.
Oh, Jesus. And then you're just like, well, fuck it. I don't want to talk about this ever again.
I should also say that we work together as well.
Oh my God. There are so many layers to this relationship.
So like, yeah, I think that was part of why it took us a long time to break up.
Well, you see them every day.
Yeah, for sure.
That's brutal. Well, I'm so glad that you dumped him.
Yes.
You're here to tell the tale.
I'm still here. I can't believe I made it through that trip, honestly.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. You were like, it's one of the worst moments of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the parade thing is pretty bad.
That's the best. That's my favorite part. That's so good. A night parade and that you're just sobbing through. That's epic.
Yes.
Oh. Well, selfishly, I'm glad that the trip went so terribly wrong because you got to be a guest on the podcast. This was so fun.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Do you have any like cool trips coming up? Like what's next for you?
So trip-wise, what's next for me is I go to Seattle next week. I go to New Orleans after that.
Yeah.
And then I'm actually going to Alaska in the spring, which will be like my first time there. And
so cool. What part of Alaska?
Anchorage. So
cool.
that'll be fun.
Are you doing like any activities while you're there?
I think I'm going to try to see some stuff. I'm doing like a station visit, which is part of my job. And then I have some shows lined up too. So it's going to be like a multi-purpose trip.
Oh my God. I love that. Anchorage, so cool. And what like a cool place that work brings you that you wouldn't normally, go to. And,
exactly.
Yeah, that's so cool that you're making the most of it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I really like about my job is that like I wouldn't necessarily go to like Tulsa or
right.
Anchorage, but to be able to like check off like, okay, now I've like done stand up in all these places, like that's kind of cool. And just seeing like parts of the country that I normally wouldn't think to visit.
I love that.
Yeah.
So if people want to see your shows, see your stand-up comedy, you're fabulous, you're hilarious. So where can people find you?
So people should come to Arguments and Grievances. It is the first Friday of the month.
Hilarious.
It happens at North Bar in Wicker Park. I also run a show called Freshman, which is a show where I invite people to share embarrassing early artwork that they've made and things that they put out into the world earnestly but are now embarrassed by.
I love that.
We had been doing that show up at Transistor in Andersonville, but we are going to be doing that in February at the Hideout. So
very cool.
Come to that, and you can find me on @AnnieMRussell on everything, and find out more about where I'm performing.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. This was lovely.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, and best of luck in Alaska. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.